All right, hello. We are here with the legendary Aaron Cox. Aaron, you've been called the man of many hats. You've been called the most reasonable man. What's your story? Who are you? Can you give us a little background of your history in the EOS community?
Yeah, sure. I've been around in the blockchain space since before EOS. I came in the Steam days, so like 2014 or whatever. Saw potential, started building. EOS came along and was announced and started getting involved before the chain launched. Took on work for wallets at that point in time and kind of got into that because I wanted to build applications in the space and just couldn't because there wasn't a good enough system architecture around kind of the stuff I wanted to build. So it's been many, many years now that I've been stuck in this space building client-side technologies, and hopefully we'll be getting back to applications at some point. But throughout that, been a block producer, been a vocal voice in the community. Apparently I'm still reasonable. And so I've been working with the coalition over the past year or so now on Wharf to bring some modern client-side SDKs for everyone in the Antelope community to build their applications, and hopefully whatever I want to build in the future too.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you on behalf of the entire Antelope ecosystem, if I'm allowed to say such a thing, for building client-side SDKs and making Wharf. In 60 seconds, give us an overview of what Wharf is and why people should care.
Wharf is, like we said, it's an SDK. It's a software development kit. It's a thing that developers would use when they have an idea of some cool application they want to build that gives them kind of all the shapes and like building blocks that they need to build their application. It makes it so that, they don't have to go out and invent certain pieces of this blockchain technology before they can get to whatever it is that their idea is. It's also a place that helps connect other people's ideas. In this case, a good example would be like wallets. Developers who are building an app aren't also going to be building a wallet most of the time. So they need those like connective pieces that are going to pull them together and allow them to connect the wallet with their application and then connect their application to the blockchain and then use different APIs and pull all of these different pieces together to like realize what their vision is. So Wharf is a collection of all of that. It takes a lot of the SDKs that we've had in the past, reimagines them, and modernizes them so that it's easier to build applications in this ecosystem.
That was good. I wasn't timing you, but I think you made it pretty close to 60 seconds there. Okay, so why EOS? What do you like about building Web3 applications on EOS?
There's a bunch of human-friendly parts to it that really make it closer to a Web 2.0 experience that you can leverage. Things like human-readable account names, whereas so many other blockchains in the space are still, you use these long strings of gibberish that like you got to check the first little bit and you got to check the last little bit and make sure it's right. And if you paste it wrong and miss something, you might screw something up. There's a lot more like that, technically, if you dig into the blockchain. And then there's also some like really powerful developer features that don't exist in other blockchains as well that make it so that once you learn those systems, or if somebody abstracts those systems for you in a nice SDK, you can take advantage of these really powerful features that let your applications do things that otherwise you wouldn't be able to. So it was the right bundle of cool technologies, I think, that drew me in.
So how does Wharf specifically make it easier for humans or developers that are humans to go from 0 to 1, I guess, and just get into it?
I guess maybe a good example is resources. A lot of the early adopters of these platforms had to learn what those things were and learn how to manage them. One of the things that Wharf can help make that easier with is its plugin architecture, so that we can like take that complexity away and turn it into something like a fee. That's really good for the user because now, if you're going to go log in and play a game, you don't really need to know what that system is. It can, if need be, jump out and say, hey, there's a shortage of something going on here. Here's how you correct it. And you can click a button to correct it rather than going off and like learning what these are and then learning how to manage them. And it provides a lot of those tools to make that process easier And the way it helps us get from 0 to 1 is that before this, like all the developers had to either just ignore that this was a user experience problem, or they had to sit there and figure out a way to solve that. We did that originally with our wallet, with Anchor. We went to that like 0.5 step, before we could get to 1, and we had to solve that problem. And everybody else without SDKs had to do the same thing. So we have taken what we've learned over the years, trying to get to 1, and then just bundled that up as like a little package to help everybody else, get there. I've said this a lot. I've used the whole reinventing the wheel analogy, and it is a situation where we're preventing people from having to recreate the wheel.
Okay, so take us through each of these different tools that you've built in WharfKit and what are the problems they solve?
Oh, where to start? I guess at the core of it all is a library we're just calling Antelope. It used to be called EOS Core because, EOS is the former naming, but now it's just called Antelope. It is the foundation of all of WharfKit. We started this library 3+ years ago. We went through the platform code and we re-implemented all of that, the same native types into JavaScript, into this client environment. And then we've been since building it and maintaining it. And we have now built the rest of Wharf on top of this. So we have the session kit, which is something for developers to connect their applications to users to create a user session. And what it does is it connects anybody's application to a user's wallet. And it does a bunch of best practices. It helps optimize a bunch of that stuff. And it just really makes it easy so that way users can log in and perform transactions on the blockchain. That's its entire focus. Alongside of that, we have a new kit called the Contract Kit, which is a way to load a smart contract from the blockchain and then read and write data to it. It's what helps developers both interpret their data so they can show it to the user, or to assemble actions that then they expect the user to then sign and through the session kit send to the blockchain. And the last kind of major pillar of Wharf is the account kit. And that is all about making it easier to manage a user's account. Like when we were talking about resources earlier, we do want to abstract all of that away so that way it's not something that most have to deal with. But when you do get into more advanced situations, I guess we could say, you might have to manage some of it manually. And this account kit is what is there to really help make that much easier than it hasn't been in the past. Beyond that, we have a new command line tool that developers can run. It allows you to generate some code for your application. Like it'll take your smart contract and bundle it up and then put it into your web application, which is a really cool feature that adds a lot of possibilities for making the application faster and have to do less API calls. Can also do things like create keys for developers, and now it can also create testnet accounts for developers, and is like this command line tool we really want to be this utility that developers can embrace to make their development experience better. We have ideas for other things we'd like to add to it. Maybe it'll compete with Kleos, which is the command line wallet that came with Antelope in the beginning. We can mirror some of that functionality so it'll be easier to have like a rudimentary wallet. And I think there's over 50 different repositories at this point under the WharfKit umbrella. Some of them plugins, some of them core libraries like this. And they all have just their own niche purpose, so that way you can kind of pick and choose which pieces you want to build your application with. And the last part is the starter kits, which is going to be, we just talked about like these like 50 pieces, and that's a lot if you were a new developer coming in and you're like, well, which ones do I use? The starter kit is going to be like a prepackaged version of all of the SDKs that you'll be able to just say, oh, I can start with the EOS starter kit. And then you include that in your application, and it's everything that our team recommends you get started with when you want to get started building something for EOS. And then as you become more and more advanced and fluent, like using these things, you can then start removing pieces and kind of making it more bespoke to your own application. So there's a lot of parts to this. All of this is documented pretty well on the WharfKit.com website. We dive into detail on like so many of the little components. And there's some guides there as well that can really help you get started. We'll put you in square one and then walk you through, like, here's the command line tool to create an account, and let's build an application together now because you have an account, and then just kind of let your imagination go wild and see what else you might want to build.
Very cool. That's a lot of kits. Can you rattle them all off really fast?
Session, account, and contractor, the three big ones. The Antelope library. Then beyond that, we have like ABI cache, common, some mock data things. There are 7 wallet plugins. There are some abstract wallet plugins. There's some transact plugins that do things like the resource stuff I was talking about. I think there's 4 different resource provider plugins that have different like approaches to how you solve these problems. There's some login plugins. There's templates for all of these things that are all their own repositories. There's also the API layer stuff. There's probably 6 or 7 different kits for things like Hyperion, for our history solution Robo, for atomic assets, for like a lot of the really popular things. So I'm sure there will be more, and hopefully more by the community. We really tried to make this so that it was this like collection of building blocks that if you build something really cool, like how about you make a building block that is now part of this like big family of tools and then share it with everybody else. So yeah, I mean, the feedback has been great and the reception has been great. Nobody has come to me and said, this isn't good, I'm going to go back to the old way of doing it. And maybe there's a quiet group of dissatisfied people, but they haven't spoken up. I hope they are, or would if they feel that way. But so far, the reception has been incredibly positive, and people just feel as if this is the next evolution of how we build these types of applications.
All right. Well, I'm kind of excited to use the command line tool. I mean, I messed around with Kleos in the very early days, and that was kind of entertaining. I'm the kind of person that grew up using like mail programs like Telnet and Pine and stuff like that. So I just enjoy interacting at that level. What's the command line toolkit called? Does it have a fancy name?
It's complicated because there's multiple ways to run it. And depending on how you're running it, it kind of has different variations in the name, but it's always just kind of WharfKit and sometimes CLI.
Okay. So you've spent years, literally just multiple years, building the tools to build the house. What house do you want to live in, Aaron? If you could live in any house, if you could now take the tools that you spent years crafting and others have spent crafting, what do you want to build?
There's a lot of things. And I think reality has set in that some of them might not just be viable to do, but like social media is one that I really think would be great to build, but it would be really hard to do and actually be successful. And that's due to external factors beyond just the technology. Right now, I'm kind of leaning into this whole gaming side of everything. That's the industry I was in before blockchain, and would be fun to kind of return to and mesh the two together now that I've, spent so many years building tech for this side of things. It could be really fun to build a game. Some sort of product, though, I do think is definitely in our roadmap for next year. And it might not be a full-time gig for us because we still need to build and maintain this kind of stuff, but we definitely want to start something. So maybe it's a little game, maybe it's a little application, I don't quite know. But out of the two things that I think I'd want to build, it's both some sort of communications community engine, which I guess more traditionally you'd think of as social media, or some form of game. So I think that both of them would be really well suited for this technology, and you could create a pretty good experience. And as long as the product itself is good and you can draw people in, like, I think it could be successful.
Social media with a game built in.
Maybe we'll go back to the days of like Facebook games. Is that what you're thinking?
There you go. Yeah, I want to be able to farm. Yeah, no, I don't. That was a lie. That's not true. Okay, so I know your capacities are tied up in developing the tools, and maybe your team like sets their sights on social media or games. What do you feel like you want to see other people build? What can people now build now that Wharf exists that you would wish they would?
I think it kind of falls into the same categories. I'm not super well versed in kind of the financial world of crypto. You know, like DeFi has been a hot thing for however long it's been. I don't understand most of how that works at the system level. I mean, I could tell you how the transactions flow and how the actions work and the data is all that stuff, but the appeal to it is just, that's not me. So I'm sure there's some of that needs to be built, and I just can't tell you what that is. I do think that I'd like to see more content systems being built, content-based systems. Like I said social media and I said community engine type things, but I think that there's other potential uses of content on the blockchain. That's what got me involved in blockchain to begin with. Steam being, you could blog post and you could post your own content. And there was a whole lot of interesting things going on there. So things that involve content, whether that's your private content or whether that's validating content or whether that's like solving some of the problems we have in the world with integrity and verifiability of where content comes from and where content goes. I think there's a lot of value there. I do think gaming is primed, maybe not whole games on the blockchain, but like subsystems of some games on the blockchain. When you're playing a complicated game, like AAA studio game, there's a lot of different services running there. It's not like one monolithic thing. Well, it is in some cases, but it's normally not one monolithic thing. And some of those subsystems in those games could easily like pull in blockchains, to use for specific purposes, to either make it more trustworthy or to decentralize it or something. So games as a whole, I'd like to see more explored in that realm. And I know I'm repeating what I want to do is what I want other people to do, but it's because it's not just like one game that could be built. It could be metaverses of games like we kind of see starting to happen or have been worked on over the past couple of years. There's just so much room for us to build a shared space for things like this, for people to interact together in these systems that were traditionally centralized and could now be decentralized, governed by their own community, controlled by their own community, and just kind of do what we've all experienced in the past, but in a different way, in a better way.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I just hope somebody builds me a nice text-based adventure game so I can relive and puts it on the blockchain so that all of our text-based adventures live for all eternity and haunt us for the rest of our lives. No, maybe there's some other good usage there. I don't know if you remember the moos and the muds and the mushes of days gone by, but I think there's a sweet spot there between blockchain, generative AI, and the multi-object oriented text-based environment, which maybe is like some images and stuff. Maybe just planting seeds.
Yeah, I think going back to some of the things that we had in the early days of the internet might be really applicable to do in these early days of blockchain. Like, I think game ideas that I've kind of had and wanted to do for a while are really old school games, but it's because they're simple enough to scale well on a blockchain while blockchain itself is still evolving. Like, you're not going to put a AAA MMO on a blockchain right now. It's just not possible with where the technology is at. More evolution needs to happen before we can jump to modern day gaming. But if you look back at like 90s, 2000s gaming, that stuff probably works pretty well right now in some blockchain ecosystems. And like, let's try that rather than going all out to begin with. And then we can catch up as time moves on.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's got to be a bunch of open source or public domain gaming stuff that could be, used. Like, you don't have to do all the development for like Pong or something like that, but you can weave it into the Pong.
I don't have to go back that far.
All right. Well, maybe I'm pushing too far.
Yeah.
Okay. So with Wharf now pretty much over the finish line, I'm sure there's some housekeeping and some continued maintenance that needs to happen. And you're going to be kind of wrangling and answering questions of the community of developers that are using Wharf for the rest of your life now, probably. But what's next for you in EOS? I mean, besides application development, is there anything else that you're kind of hankering to dip your toes into?
There's things that are still unsolved. Things like account creation. That's been kind of a hot topic recently. You know, the initial onboarding experience where, you know, let's say we did build a game and we wanted to pull people in from outside of blockchain space. Like there's still that initial hurdle that is difficult for them to overcome before they can like get to whatever it is you want them to do. So there might be some exploration. There's still some room in Wharf to grow. At this point in with our company, like we need to build something that's going to be able to help sustain us. So we can't just keep relying 100% on like we're going to be building public goods forever. Eventually that is going to end. All of like the critical ideas will be met, and then it'll be harder and harder to sell subsequent ideas to get funded. So that, for us, I think next year in 2024, what we'll probably be looking at is really dividing our focus between, let's build a product that can like help sustain us and help keep us as a team working together, paying our bills and providing all the services we do provide, you know, APIs and doing some wallet development and stuff like that. And then probably also doing a little bit of the part-time on the public goods. Start identifying like what pieces come next, whether it's this account creation, whether it's wallet development to make the user experience better on that end, whether it's new resource models, the stuff that most users shouldn't have to care about, that if we could take the time to fix, we probably should. Like there are things that need to be addressed, but the priority still needs to be determined.
Awesome. Super pumped you're still here and building in EOS. We need all the things so that you can bring your very reasonable mind to. So appreciate that. Where can people go to learn more about Wharf and Greymass and everything that you do?
Well, Greymass is greymass.com, and it's Greymass with an E, so GREYMASS.com. You can find links to all of our projects there, including WharfKit, but you can also go to WharfKit.com, and that is where we're building kind of as the central hub for you to get involved with Wharf, for you to start building your application for whatever your idea is. We're hoping that when you want to build the client for it, that's where you can go. When you're looking to build a smart contract, that this is not where you go. Just to be clear there, like there's two sides of development. One is you need to build a contract, and one is you need to build something to interact with the contract, which is the client. Wharf is the client side stack of everything. So we'll share links throughout our documentation and throughout our like guides and stuff on where you can go to find resources for contract development. So hopefully it'll be a good starting point. But just so developers know, there's two paths you kind of need to go down, just like with traditional development, back end and front end. So greymass.com, WharfKit.com. And you can also find all of this on GitHub. On GitHub, you can look up Greymass. It's an organization. I think we have like 200 some GitHub repositories right now. It's silly how much we've published over the years. And then WharfKit is also another organization on GitHub that houses all of the open source code for Wharf. So those are the two main places. From both of those places, you can find many other links to other resources like Telegram and Twitter. And I think that's pretty much the two main social platforms we use.
Awesome. Aaron, before we go, I just have to ask, you live in Northern California now in Bigfoot country. Have you seen the Bigfoot yet? Have you had any time in the woods talking to the Bigfoot?
Not yet.
No?
I'm actively searching. No, I'm not, but I would love to, and I haven't heard anything yet. So I've only been out here a little while, but like I have seriously talked about buying cameras or something, getting some like trail cameras.
Yeah.
I think that'd be awesome. Let's capture a cryptid.
A cryptid? Is that what you called it?
Yeah. Like cryptozoological creatures. They're...
Wow.
Yeah.
Today I learned.
That stuff fascinates me. They're like Loch Ness Monster and other things like that. It's the things that are of like folk tales and whatever that have not been proven as science. I don't know. I'm not the proper one to give a definition, but that's
hey,
yeah.
That's awesome. And now I know what a cryptid is. I had no idea. And it fits perfectly with cryptid.
Yep.
I mean, it's just like perfectly on theme. I have a theory about Bigfoot, but not for today. We're going to save that for our next conversation, whenever that may be. You'll have to
That sounds good.
remember to tease me about it. Aaron, thanks so much for being here today on this fireside chat. We gaze across the beautiful, calm ocean waters here from the wharf. Thanks for building this wharf that we're sitting on. It's great. I'm going to hoist the anchor and head out to sea. You with
Sounds
me?
like an awesome plan.
All right.